back to VP Reaction. I'm Peter.
I'm Vicky.
Welcome to today's part 2 of what we did on the BBC making of Elton John. We did part 1. If you haven't watched it yet, there is, I think it can be suggested to you down here. So for today's episode, it is BBC the making of Elton John part 2. And as always, as part 1 was, this was brought to us by Dan, so he did this part 2. So guys, welcome here and vibe with us to the end. Let's know more about Elton John.
And don't forget to subscribe. If you're new here, welcome so much. We do this each and every day, so stay tuned. Let's enjoy it together and let's learn more together
about Elton John.
Let's lay down an album, which we're looking to release it on the DJM label. I said to him, yeah, but we can't put it out under the name Reg Dwight. That's not a very awe-inspiring name.
I've just had him mention Reggie Dwight, and after we did part 1, Dan had mentioned to us on the comments that Elton John was not his his real name. He was called that Reggie Dwight. Reggie Dwight.
Yeah.
Reggie, I think Reggie is the short form, so Reggie Dwight. So after their first, I think his band, when they were in the band Bluesology. Yeah, that's where band. He got the names, his stage name Elton John, from maybe the name of the other members who were also in the same band. Yes.
Okay.
Simply combining the names of Long John Baldry and Elton Dean, the sax player in Bluesology, Reg came up with Elton John. Empty Sky was released in June 1969, but went largely unnoticed.
Empty Sky did have a proper release, and I'm sure review copies were sent around, but nobody paid any attention to it at all. And in sort of musical terms, it was really not much more than demos.
Reg's creation, Elton John, was still a work in progress.
He's not really Mark Bolan, is he? You know what I mean? That was my immediate thought. I thought, he's a bit short, he's a bit chubby, and I don't know whether he's got the wherewithal to be an artiste.
Taking all his musical experience, a batch of new and improved lyrics from Bernie, and the production team behind David Bowie's hit Space Oddity, Elton was about to seize his moment.
Elton told Gus and me explicitly and specifically, you have carte blanche.
Like, I have a question. Like, he named Bluesology, then he changed to Elton John. The name he changed for his own name or the band's name?
I think Bluesology was the band he was in when he was like 17 years.
Yeah.
So from the band, he now
formed his name.
Formed his stage name, that is Elton John.
Okay.
So that was like his stage name.
Okay.
So I think later he now came and when maybe
band.
Found a new band and maybe now maybe named the band as Elton John.
So he
band.
first changed his name to using the stage name Elton John.
Yes,
because I'm noticing like after right name, they are now referring to him as Elton.
Yeah,
John,
because it was his name. I think not. It was not the band name, but
it was
his stage name.
Wow.
Yeah.
We want you to do your own thing.
Gus came in, met with my father and myself, and asked for quite a high budget. And having heard the songs, wanted to orchestrate them. We were looking at a very high budget, and we decided to take the gamble.
We were very careful to create a beautiful soundscape, knowing that it was going to sound really nice. Maybe lovely is a nice word.
Peering out of tiny eyes, the grubby hands that grip the rail, wipe the window clean of frost as the morning air laid on the latch.
It all went very smoothly. Dick James was overjoyed, and we just got more and more sort of excited as to the prospects of the success of this record.
Here was Elton John reborn as the profound singer-songwriter, complete with orchestral arrangements, heartfelt lyrics, and now the look to carry it all off.
Singer-songwriters at the time were fairly sort of moody characters, and Elton seemed like quite a shy little fellow when you met him, and Bernie's words were very much in the sort of singer-songwriter mould of the time, so that sort of suited him.
I was on that undercurrent. I hadn't had a chart success or anything like that, but I was on the verge.
We got some airplay. I don't remember it breaking into the top 30. And we, to be blunt, were struggling.
The Elton John album wasn't selling in Britain, so, desperate to secure any return on his investment, Dick James hawked the record to his contacts across the pond.
In the post comes this Elton John album. So I take it out, I listen, put it on my turntable, and I listen to this great album, and I said, thank you, God, this is incredible. It was one of the greatest pieces of music I'd ever heard in my life. So then I said, we have to bring him to America and, you know, break him here in America.
Wow.
This enthusiasm from the Americans was enough to persuade Dick James to fund one last attempt to launch Elton by sending him and his band to LA.
Dick sent them over there, and it basically was sink or swim. This was it.
Touching down in Los Angeles was the stuff of dreams for Elton and Bernie, and a far cry from their shared bedroom in the London suburbs.
I was just interested in going because it was America, you know. I mean, I'd always wanted to come here. It was a dream, you know.
Yeah. The band were met by a welcoming party intent on presenting Elton as someone who was already a star.
We were driving from the airport down the freeway, and then we got to the Sunset Strip, and it was like being on parade. It was just unbelievable, you know, the California sunshine and the pretty girls all over the place. It was amazing.
So Nigel was also from the first band.
Yeah. Nigel, I think for the Nigel and who there were two.
Okay, because Nigel was also in the band Elton John band. Yeah.
There was still a transition from the 60s going on. There was still the singer-songwriter era and Flower Power and that whole the Summer of Love and all that stuff. It started in LA. So he came into a very vibrant scene.
The US label men made sure the great and the good of LA's music scene were assembled for Elton's week-long stint at the Troubadour Club.
It was brilliant that Russ Regan, the head of Uni Records, put him in this club rather than go to the Whiskey or someplace, see, because the rock acts were playing the Whiskey more or less. This was the Songwriters Club. This is where you sat every week and you saw Joni Mitchell, and you saw James Taylor, and you saw Tim Hardin, and you saw those guys. And so he was putting Elton John along in that company.
Senorita, play guitar, plays it just for you.
So in the US, he started also playing in a club, because I've seen that is like a club.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Remember, I think at first when they were the band Bluesology, when they formed it, they were doing more of the backups. Dan mentioned that they were doing backups for I don't know.
Oh, Labelle.
Labelle, Labelle. Like they did some backups maybe before now they started. Maybe after was it Dick James, or they've just mentioned his name, who just flew them to the now US.
Oh yeah.
Maybe when they came to the US, now they started doing their own maybe singing.
But they had already joined with the band. Yeah, the songwriter who they were writing.
Oh yes, they had made. I think even the first episode we were told how they met. They were friends. Yeah. Writing songs for other artists.
My by beads of
Elton fitted right in at the Troubadour, but had a lot more to offer thanks to his apprenticeship in rock and roll and rhythm and blues.
All of a sudden, he jumps up from the piano, he kicks the thing, and I go, see, you're always relating to things. This is Jerry Lee Lewis, that's what he's doing.
I was having a ball, and we rocked. Had a great three-piece band. And I came out and did 60 Years On, but it wasn't really like the record. It was more like an extended jam version.
He had terrific songs of a wide range. He was not copying what other people were doing. So by the end of the evening, it was just like the place was abuzz. You know, it was like, can you believe what you just saw? And I couldn't wait to run to the typewriter and sit down and write.
That one night and that one review saved me a year's work. I mean, there was no internet to spread it, but it flew, word of mouth.
So at that time, the magazine was the internet.
Yeah, super rock star arrives on the scene.
Okay, so he trended on the internet, the magazine, huh?
Yeah, in the magazine.
Oh, wow.
Overnight, Elton had gone from the Last Chance Saloon to the talk of the town.
It was so exciting for us. We could see in the audience these people. Steve Stills was there. Some of the Three Dog Night guys were there. I think even Diana Ross was there.
Also in the crowd was the songwriter and piano man of the times that Elton admired the most.
The second night at the Troubadour, I was halfway through Burn Down the Mission, and then I saw Leon in the second row, in the long grey hair and the aviator glasses, and I practically froze, because he was, at that particular time in my life, he was my idol, without question.
Oh,
okay.
That's also Dan had mentioned this to us. Like, was it Jerry?
Yeah.
Someone Jerry. He was like, you know the way Elton is playing his piano.
He used to play from the 50s.
Yeah, he used to play from the 50s. So like it was like he was like his mentor, his idol.
Wow.
And you remember he had mentioned like he was on that performance, and Elton has just frozen because you see like wow, my mentor is here. Yeah.
They sound the same.
Exactly.
Leon Russell was a cult figure on the American music scene, a sought-after session man and songwriter.
I was petrified meeting him afterwards because I thought he was going to tie me to a chair and say, listen, this is how to play. And then, of course, he embraced me and was very complimentary.
He was quite a beautiful soul singer, had a huge blues awareness that I found interesting. I thought my career was over because he was a lot more active and a lot more showmanship. So I figured I'd had it.
That's what I was getting in those early shows at the Troubadour, was people, you know, musicians that I respected coming up to me and saying, this is really great. So I knew I was doing the right thing. And you know, my music at that point was more American anyway.
Ladies and gentlemen, a few months ago, a young man came over from England, and he shot right to the top of the pop music field. His first album is a hit, his first single is a hit, and I hate it. No, I really like him. I mean, I really like him.
Elton didn't have to fight his way into those charts. He just exploded into the charts. I mean, there was a door waiting for him, you know? The 60s were winding down, and you didn't know what the 70s were going to be, you know? The Beatles are breaking up, right?
Yeah.
Was rock and roll over? Where was it going to go?
It's a little bit funny, this feeling inside.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those who can easily hide. I don't have much money, but
Your song was just one of those songs that came out at a time when people were reaching for something that felt real, and your song was such a sweet song. It was like expressing love with the inarticulateness of young people.
So excuse me for getting, but these things I do, you see, I've forgotten if they're green or they're blue. Anyway, the thing is,
it was written out of pure innocence. I mean, when you listen to the lyric of that song, you can tell that it's written by somebody who's very naive and very young, and I was. I mean, you know, I was 17 years old, never been kissed. Well, I don't know about that, but pretty much.
tell everybody this is your song.
With Your Song, Elton and Bernie finally found their voice, and back home it became their first top 10 hit.
Wow.
Eltonjohn.
Your Song.
Yeah, Your Song is the song.
Oh, wow.
Remarkable man from the world of pop, whom some would claim to be Britain's newest musical superstar.
Wow.
The boys who'd shared a room and a dream of becoming famous songwriters returned home men, where they were now being compared to their heroes.
Songs like 60 Years On are prompting American as well as British critics to suggest that Elton...
Okay.
So imagine being compared to your hero. Like,
yeah,
wow.
to your mentors. And that came with change of location. That's
yes,
probably the most...
Since they came to the New York now.
The LA.
Oh, yes. Sorry, the LA. Like, I think there they found now. They found their
acceptance,
yeah.
inventive and original team of songwriters since Lennon and McCartney.
How wonderful life is while you're in the world.
Elton, once the shy and retiring songwriter, now had a new air of confidence.
When it happened all so fast, and I was so surprised myself at how he suddenly took off and became this other person.
I happened to be, it must have been about 1970, 71, and I was watching TV, and they introduced him as Mr. Elton John, and I didn't take it, and then I peered at the television set, and I thought, that's not Elton John, that's Reg Dwight.
There was now little of the old Reg Dwight on show, and Elton's stage presence had also grown.
I always say I was a bit like the Jimi Hendrix of the piano because I had freedom. I could do exactly what I wanted. I couldn't, throw it up in the air, catch it, play it behind my back, but I could certainly fly on it and do handstands on it.
And he loved all that early success, and it was just so much more fun, and he was having a good time and he was making a few bob. And,
so if Bluesology was doing great like that, like how did it come until they changed to Elton John Band?
But I think when he was performing in the US, he was already Elton.
Really?
Yeah, because the first time
yes, he was Elton, but not like he was still in Bluesology Band.
Okay.
Yeah, because they had not changed to now the Elton John Band, but he himself, he was already Elton, using that stage name Elton.
Oh yeah, I understand.
There's nothing like a bit of success, is there? So it's a pretty good drug.
When he became Elton John, he was rebelling against everything he wasn't allowed to do as a child, So it was like he was escaping this repression that was forced upon him when he was younger.
By this time, he had come out, not publicly, but to himself. So that made him more comfortable in his own skin. And by this time, he had met John Reid, and they were like a pretty formidable team. They were out to conquer the world.
Oh, yeah.
John Reid, a precocious young record label exec, became Elton's partner and manager through the most prolific period of his career. Alongside constant touring, Elton would release 7 albums in the next 3 years.
7?
I look back on it now and I think it's a lot of young adrenaline, and you only have that adrenaline for a certain part of your career. But the most important thing was that we had to do, under contract, 2 records a year.
The follow-up to the Elton John LP was already finished and ready to release. Tumbleweed Connection, born out of Elton and Bernie's shared love for all things American, seemed perfect for their new audience stateside.
I don't know if we knew when we started doing the Tumbleweed album that it was going to be such a conceptualized Americana piece. You know, that album was recorded before we even went to the States.
Bernie's inspiration for this ode to America came from a childhood spent dreaming of the promised land, a world of wide open spaces and saloon bar shootouts.
Okay.
Oh.
That's where we are on our part 2.
Exactly. Wow.
Yeah, we have learned a lot on this episode. You've learned how they landed in the LA, in the US, and how they came to fame now. Like they were out topping the charts. Huh?
Yes, they were competing, and I think that was the 60s when the Beatles were on the peak as well. So
it was in the 70s now when the Beatles had already separated.
In the 60s?
In late 60s, 70s now. You know, it was in the 70s when they went to US.
I don't think so. Because in the 70s is when they changed the name from to Eltonjohn Band. Because there was a time when one of them mentioned that now it's the 60s is almost winding up and we don't know what the 70s has for us.
Yeah, the Beatles are separating at the time.
Yeah, so it was all these they were doing in the 60s. I think in the late 60s, from 65, 60 to 67 there. Okay. 68 is when they were performing and all that.
That's when they went to
the US. It was not yet in the 70s. It was, I think, 60s, late 60s there.
Oh, well, let's see what part 3 got for us. But meanwhile, it's really an interesting journey. Thank you, Dan, for sharing this. Such an educative. If you like it, I know you like it. Give it some like, 5 emojis, and another explanation that it might not have been handled on this part.
Yes,
you can come with that and the comment section. Like it, subscribe, and stay tuned for another episode.
But this was really amazing. But you can correct us wherever we are wrong and some information. Also, tell us like if they were doing well as the Bluesology band, like what now led to the change to the Elton band later. I would really like to know that. Maybe we will get to be explaining the part 3, but you guys can comment that before we go to the part 3 of it. But thank you so much for your time. See you on our next.
We out.
Bye bye.